Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of my lectures. So today we're talking about bioenergetics. So bioenergetics is the study of energy transformations in living things. And this is generally how energy transformations work. So you have a large chemical energy compound, and then through the process of conversion, you release heat and free energy, and you get a smaller chemical energy compound. This free energy is usable energy. We can use this energy. Okay, so basically, you turn this into this, and while the process in which you turn this into this, you release heat and free energy. And then, so the reason why we learn about thermodynamics, which is like the chemical process of cars, is because it's really similar to cell energy conversion. So we can look at both of these. They both have the same generic pattern. So like in thermodynamics, the large chemical energy compound would be gasoline plus oxygen. And then the conversion process would be combustion. You also release heat. And then the free energy that is released in thermodynamics is that the car moves. That's the energy. The free energy makes the car move. And then after you turn gasoline plus oxygen to the product using combustion, you get carbon dioxide and water. So the carbon dioxide and water is the small chemical energy compound. And then it's the same thing with cell energy conversion. So our large chemical energy compound would be glucose and oxygen. And then our conversion process is cellular respiration, and we also release heat. And then our free energy that is released is called ATP, and ATP is used for is like energy for cell work. And then our products, which is the small chemical energy compound, would be carbon dioxide and water. Okay, and this is really important to know, but bonds, they store energy. So like when you create a bond, you have to absorb energy in order to create it. And then when you create it, that bond has energy inside it. So when you break that bond, you also release the energy that was originally stored in it. Okay, so let's talk about the two types of reactions. So there's endergonic and exergonic. Endergonic absorbs energy, which means it's like creating, like when you create a bond, that'd be endergonic because you have to absorb energy in order to create a bond. And then exergonic is releasing energy. So like if you were breaking a bond, then it'd be exergonic because you release energy when you break a bond. And these are what the graphs look like. And you can also see here. So like this is the amount of energy required, and you see how it goes up? Because like you need a lot of energy, like you have to absorb energy in order to create the product, versus this one, you're releasing energy. And then in most graphs, they have this little hump, like they go upwards before going back down in all of these. And that up thing is called activation energy. It's basically what gets the reaction going. Okay, so now let's talk about coupled reactions. It's basically like a cycle. So like this over here would be a coupled reaction. So we have a product, right? And then we go through an exergonic reaction, which like in exergonic, energy is released. And then so after the energy is released, you're left with a small chemical compound. And then that small chemical compound then becomes the product. Like you take the small energy, you take this reactant, and then you basically absorb energy. So you go through an endergonic reaction, and then it becomes bigger again. So it's like a whole cycle. So like the product, like you have something, and then like it consumes energy, and then so now that it's big, it becomes the product of this, and then the energy gets released and it becomes small. And like it's a cycle. I hope you understand that. If you guys have any more questions, you can just ask me. And then next, let's talk about oxidation reduction reactions. So like those are chemical reactions that pass electrons between molecules. And then one thing you should know is that electrons move with hydrogens. So wherever the hydrogen goes, the electrons follow. Oxidation is basically the loss of electrons. So when you lose hydrogen, you lose electrons, and that's called oxidation. When you gain electrons, you also gain hydrogen. Or when you gain hydrogen, you gain electrons, and that's called reduction. Okay, moving on. So now we're going to talk about energy carriers. We have two types of energy carriers. One is the coenzyme, and one is ATP. So coenzymes accept and transport high energy electrons. And then ATP, like we talked about it earlier. We have to know this name, by the way, adenosine triphosphate. And ATP is like the energy currency for the cell. Okay, so let's go more into depth about ATP. So like, let's first look at the name, adenosine triphosphate. So this over here, this is a 6 carbon plus a 5 carbon. And this entire thing, the red is called adenine. I think it's pronounced adenine. And then here we have a 5 carbon sugar-like thing, and that's called ribose. And then we have 3 phosphate groups. So does this look familiar to you? Like the 5 carbon sugar and like the phosphate groups? Yeah, that's because it's a nucleic acid. It has the same structure as a nucleic acid. Like if we go back into our previous notes, in nucleic acids, there's a phosphate group, a nitrogen base, and the 5 carbon sugar. And we have the same thing over here. We have the nitrogen base, like the 6 carbon and the 5 carbon over here. We have the 5 carbon sugar, which is called ribose. And we have some phosphate groups over here. So this ATP is a nucleic acid. And then we have ADP. ADP. ADP is like really similar to ATP, except it has 1 less phosphate. And since these bonds hold energy and there's 1 less bond, that means there's less energy in this compared to this. Okay. And then so these are some chemical reactions that can like make ATP and stuff. So when you have ADP and you add the phosphate, you also have to add energy in order to bond these together. And then you get ATP. And then for ATP, you can break that up into ADP plus phosphate, and you release energy while doing so. Because like you store energy in this bond, remember? Okay, and now we're going to talk about metabolism. So just know the difference between these two. Anabolism is like building chemical bonds, which means like absorbing energy. And then catabolism is breaking chemical bonds, which is like releasing energy. And then now this is like what we're learning next, which is enzymes. And like, so basically when we have a chemical reaction, we have some problems that happen. Like, because chemical reactions take a really, really long time to happen, and they require way too much activation energy. Remember the activation energy? It's this little hump that's needed to like start the reaction. So our solution to those problems are enzymes, and we'll be talking about that next.